Christmas is coming, and Ollie and I were thinking, this year, instead of buying presents for family members, we could make them this wooden cat that we made as an experiment some time ago. We're aiming to make 6 this time, all in one day. I think it's a bit ambitious, but Ollie thinks it's possible. I can't work at home because of the sawdust, and I don't have a garage, so this common corridor will have to do. Here are some of the tools I think I will need today. I'm glad the width of the wood is exactly what we need. I also thought that with this project, I could spend some time with my daughter, and maybe even teach her a little bit about design and crafting. Now I hardly have any formal training in this. I just picked it up on my own, out of the desire of wanting to create things. So far it's quite tiring, and it's just the first piece. It's looking good. And now I brief Ollie on doing the less dangerous but also important part. She has to file down the bodies, especially the corners, to make it smoother. She's starting with the rougher file, and then she'll use the smoother file later. I felt this big saw will help me cut faster than my hacksaw. The teeth are a lot bigger. It's a bit harder to control, pretty wobbly. Have to make sure I don't cut off my own fingers. Am I doing this the right way? It's like Ollie and I are in an orchestra. I'm glad she's assisting me today. This lightens the load a lot. I probably wouldn't be making these cats if she wasn't doing this with me. I continue working, while Ollie has a breakfast that my wife brought back for her. One of her favorites from the food center. I'm thinking this is a lot more physical than sketching or painting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now what's next? Gotta do the ears, legs, and then the tail. Ollie's back at it, figuring out the thickness of the ears. I'm using my prototype cat as a guide. Here I've switched to the coping saw, or do you pronounce it coping? Cool thing about this saw is that it can cut in a curve. For 6 cats with 2 ears each, I'm gonna have to cut out 12 of these pieces. Whew, halfway there. Getting quite hot and sweaty. Ollie's still working. Here we are, 12 ears. Now for the legs. Each leg has a slant to it, so I need to cut them out strategically. I'm trying to be as efficient as possible too. I'm finding this takes lots of stamina. 6 cats have 24 legs. And here we are. So it's pretty tiring. I think I'm gonna take a break. I've done the body, the ears, and the legs. I'll do the tails later after lunch. In the time being, I should sweep up this sawdust. I have to be considerate to the neighbors. Ollie's the design department. She's planning out the colors and patterns for each cat. This frees me up to work on the tails. I find that this part is a bit more complex because of the shape. It's more fragile too. Both our energy levels are getting lower. Then I remember my power tools. I actually bought this to modify fountain pen nibs. Now they'll help me curve some corners pretty nicely. We're not using professional woodworking tables, so we have to improvise. Just as I was finishing this last tail, it broke, but I glued it back with this. I think it won't be noticeable. Finally, we're done with cutting up all the pieces.
These 4 looks like other animals and these 2 are fine.
Okay. Look like cats. The rest don't really look like cats.
Oh, that looks like a bear, huh?
Yeah.
Ollie's energy levels are crashing, but she's hanging on, and I'm proud of her. Doing art isn't always fun and relaxing. There are times where we have to push through to the end, to get that satisfying result and that sweet rewarding feeling we want. With the tools we are using and the time we are giving ourselves, I felt it's best to aim for an imperfect look in which the pieces are slightly mismatched, and there's a certain level of unpolished, but not too much that it looks like a mistake, just enough to make it charming, and each one is one of a kind. I'll glue the tails after the painting. Well, we started at 9 AM and now it's about 5 PM. We have to go for dinner, so just gonna have to continue this later. Maybe tonight or tomorrow. After dinner, we continue with the next stage. We're painting the wooden cats with acrylic paint. Acrylic paint seems to work pretty nicely with wood. I like how I can still see the wood texture through the paint. I am admiring Ollie's endurance so far. She hasn't given up even though it's such hard work. Ollie and I keep making mistakes with our painting here and there, but acrylic is pretty forgiving. When applied thickly, it can be quite opaque, and so we can cover over mistakes if we make them. It's getting pretty late. We're not gonna finish painting all the cats by tonight. With the leftover paint in my palette, I paint over an old sketch in an old sketchbook. The next morning, we're back at it. We only have about 1 or 2 hours before we have to head out for a lunch gathering. That's gonna take up the whole afternoon. At this point, it feels like a marathon, but we're past the halfway mark. Time to go. I make sure the leftover paint doesn't go to waste. I was stuffing myself with this over lunch. It's evening and I'm back home again. I'm starting the next stage. I'm keeping my arms really close to my body as I'm painting this. I'm hardly breathing. I'm being extra careful, because if I make a mistake with the eyes, I have to repaint the whole face. Same goes for the nose. Trying to be as precise as possible. I tell Ollie that I'll handle this part. This is probably the most nerve-wracking part. I'm using a very fine brush. One wrong flick and I have to repaint the face. And just a small tilt changes the whole expression. For the cats that have black patches on their faces, we realized we couldn't use black dots for the eyes. We have to do them differently. Ollie showed me references of cat eyes on the internet. They seem to be a mustard greenish color, so that's what I'm painting first. And then I'll add the black eyeballs later. Attaching the tail while the paint dries on the eyes, trying to make it as centered as possible. Now with the eyeballs. Every time my brush slips, the eyeball grows a bit bigger. I force myself to focus. So tired, but the finish line is just up ahead. Just one final push. This is the last thing to do. And then I finish up this random painting with the leftover paint. Alright, now it's 7 PM on Sunday and we're finally finished. And now for the catwalk.